Hey everybody, welcome back to our feature segment. And today what we're going to be talking about are a lovely term called dimensions. So, everyone always asks the question, what is a dimension, right? People think obviously their brain goes to dimensions like length, width, height, right? But in the world of Business Central, a dimension
layman's terms
it's a code that you can set up, and then you can associate those codes with different transactions, so that you can analyze your financial reports based on those dimensions or values. So if you were to think about this, another way that I always look at it is think about like other systems. So not Business Central, but one of our many competitors. When you set up those systems, and a lot of legacy systems are like this, you have to build your chart of account structure. And that chart of account structure is going to have what's called like a primary segment, which says, okay, this is office supplies, computer supplies, sales, cost of goods sold, and so on. But then, and that might be like 4 characters or 5 digits, let's say. But then you'll see like what's called an account string, which is those 5 digits dash 3 digits dash 2 digits. And the 3 digits might represent a department. And then the last 2 digits might represent a region or a business unit or a project code or something. And so that's called like a chart of account string. And those systems, while it's effective, and those that you then can build financial reports by department or by business unit or whatever it is, the downsides of that model is that typically once you set up that structure, that you're locked in, right? You can't change it because now you're going to have all kinds of history. You're posting transactions to these different accounts. Also, usually those could only be numeric values. So your departments are Department 100, Department 200, Department 300. You also then have to set up many GL accounts because you're required to set up every single combination of every primary segment plus department plus project or
it's a lot for a big company,
whatever, right? So you might have, it could be perfectly plausible if you have 200 GL accounts plus 20 departments plus 30 projects, 30 times 20 times 200.
Right. Wow.
You've got thousands of GL accounts, right? And then lastly, it's sometimes difficult or impossible to implement a new segment later in the future, right? You're kind of locked into that structure, like I said.
Okay.
So what's different about dimensions is that with dimensions, you can actually set up, first you set up your chart of accounts, and that's your 4-character or 5-character chart, like computer supplies, sales, cost of goods sold. Then, for all those other ways that you want to be able to report on your income statement or sales or expenses, you would set up a dimension. And you can set up an unlimited number of dimensions. We have customers with 15 dimension codes that they use for analyzing, slicing, and dicing their financial data. Okay, and what's also a pro about dimensions is that you do not have to set up each unique combination of GL account and dimensions. So you have your 200 GL accounts. That is your chart of accounts.
Okay.
Separately, you set up your different dimensions. So you have your department dimension with your 20 different department codes. You have your project dimension with 10 different projects, right? And then, so you don't have to define what all of those valid combinations are. In addition, each dimension value, so the department code itself that you're going to use, can be 20 characters, and those are alphanumeric. So as an example, let's say your department codes today are 100 is admin, 200 is sales, 300 is marketing.
Okay.
In Business Central, I would say, well, why don't you call your admin department ADMIN, admin, and call sales SALES for sales, right? Make it
20, right?
Make it intuitive.
Yeah.
Why make users memorize numeric codes.
Yeah.
Right?
Doesn't make any sense.
When I can make it more intuitive and just call production PROD or warehouse WHSE or something,
Yeah.
right? You get the point. So that's another benefit. You also can use what's called an indented structure with dimensions. So here's a good example of that. So let's say you want to track within your company, you want to track sales and gross profit by region. And you're going to have every state in the United States defined as as one of those, and then various states will roll up to a territory, and then the territory will roll up to a country, and the country will roll up to a region,
Right.
and then you have your whole organization, right? You have Europe and you have North America and all these various levels. In many systems, to do that reporting on all of those levels, you would have to have multiple codes. One for the state,
Right.
one for the territory, one for the
Which just gets out of hand.
region,
Yeah.
right, and all of those. With an indented structure, when I set up my new customer, all I do is pick what state they're in, the lowest level,
Okay.
and then through the hierarchy that you build when you're setting up that dimension, we now can automatically roll up those to my territory, to my region, to my country,
Wow.
whatever level I want, and I don't have to do anything else. So not only is the user entry simpler, because I only have to enter one field, but I also eliminate errors, and I can't have where the state of Nebraska is in the northeast region. It can't happen, right? Where I have
So-
data inconsistencies.
Do you always have to pick a state, or can you choose what you want? Well, let's just say it's
Yeah.
you're a global company.
You would have to pick a lowest level, yeah.
Okay.
Whatever the lowest level happens to be. Maybe in Europe you only go down to the country level,
Yeah. Okay.
but you'd have to go down to that country level. Now, good question. When do I have to use the dimensions? That's another good thing. You actually can define which GL accounts each dimension code is required on.
Okay.
So, for example, for your sales account, you're going to want to make sure that your customer type, product type dimensions, and territory, let's call it dimension, those are all populated. So users can't post a sale, anything to the sales account, unless they've populated a value in all three of those dimensions. But maybe you have other accounts, like inventory adjustments, where those are not relevant. So for that GL account, you might not require a customer type, for example.
And you're a big fan of having to require something be having the end user choose what dimension is that they want to use, I guess, right? You're not a fan of automating it?
Well, I am. So there are what's called default dimensions. So the example is, let's say, here's an example. You have a customer, let's say, that they sell flooring,
Okay.
right? And they sell commercial flooring, and they sell recreational flooring. So like commercial would be for offices, recreation is like for gymnasiums or rec rooms or whatever, right? So one of the things you could do is you could set a default value maybe on the item itself. So when you set up an item, you say this item is a commercial type item, right? So now every time you sell it, no one has to do anything. And all those sales orders and invoices and credit memos and everything, the fact that it's a commercial sale flows into the general ledger automatically with no user intervention.
Nice. Real nice.
Now, here's a potential issue. Let's say, in this example, let's say that someone at that company decides that they want to set up default product types by customer. Because they go, well, this is a commercial customer. They're usually going to purchase commercial flooring from us, right? Well, guess what? That commercial office building, they also are going to have maybe a rec room or workout room in their building. So you're actually going to sell them some recreational flooring. So what could happen is when you select the customer, it defaults commercial in. So I go, oh, this is a commercial customer. Now I get down to the line and I go, okay, they want this commercial flooring here, that's fine. And then I add the recreational flooring. Well, what happens?
Does it error out?
It does not, no.
Okay.
There's what's called dimension priorities, which says, well, which one's more important? Which one wins? Is it the customer? So we're always going to set that to commercial?
Mm-hmm.
Or, no, it's the item because it's a recreational item. So set that to recreational on that line.
These dimension priorities, though, is it like a global thing, or can you set the priorities based on each particular customer?
No, you would set that globally to say,
Okay.
whenever I have this dimension in use and I have a customer and an item, which one takes the higher priority? Now, here's why I would tell you that we very rarely use dimension priorities.
Why is that?
Because when we're implementing dimensions, we want to stay away from any place where you could have a default set on two different types of records.
Okay.
So in this case, what I would tell you is your data in that scenario where you sold some recreational flooring to a commercial customer, I would tell you that data that you're going to get at the end of the day in your financial statements by type, commercial versus residential, is going to be meaningless to you. Because you're not going to really know, well, wait, it says I sold this much of commercial flooring. Well, did you sell it to commercial customers?
Yeah.
Or how much recreational flooring did you sell? We don't know now. So our best practices when we implement it is we say you should only ever have one record type that defaults a value in.
Okay.
So it's either gonna be the product, and that's how we define if it's commercial versus recreational, or it's the customer that defines it. But as soon as you start flip-flopping or changing it or having two different things that it could come from, you really, if you think about it long and hard,
insights, yeah.
you really don't know what you're looking at when you look at $1 million of commercial sales at the end of the year. Because, right, was it who I sold it to or what types of products we sold? We don't know. So that is we are in the weeds right there, my friend, on dimensions.
What do customers find more important, the header dimension or the line dimension?
So the header dimensions are really only used as defaults for how the lines get populated.
Okay.
Ultimately, it's whatever is on the lines is what rules,
what counts.
and that's what gets posted into the general ledger
Okay.
for financial reporting. So yeah, you could change it on the header, and then it'll actually ask you, do you want to update all the lines if you've already created lines, if you do that. But yeah, usually it's always whatever's on the lines that dictates what's going to get posted.
So is there ever an issue when there's, like, let's say, multiple default dimensions set up?
Well, that's where the priorities come into play. You mean for the same code?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say you should never have that situation.
Okay.
Right. So we always tell people, look, okay, so first of all, we say one, only set up the dimensions that you know you're going to use on day one. Right? Don't go setting up 20 dimensions because you think someday you may want to report on something.
Chances are you probably won't.
You're killing yourself, right? And the reason I say that is because at any point in time in the future, you can add a new dimension and set it up and start using it. So you want to make sure you've got all your bases covered for financial reporting when you implement Business Central, but don't overdo it and don't go, well, someday someone might want to look at this.
Mm-hmm.
I would say don't do it.
It's really a key differentiator between our competitors and whatnot. Just because, like I think you were saying, for the competitor, they have to set up everything in the beginning, and it's just always there then.
Yep.
They can't really go back and add to it.
Yeah. Another scenario, common question that we deal with a lot is people get confused. Like, okay, so let's stick with inventory, and we have a product type dimension called commercial versus recreational. A lot of people ask, so well, wait, is this an inventory posting group, or is this an item category code, or should I use a dimension for this? the answer, I mean, there's always some variability in it,
Mhm.
but the core answer is use a dimension if you need the ability to analyze your financial statement data in the general ledger by product type.
Okay.
If all you need to do is run sales reports and inventory statistics reports, then you can use the item category code or product group code or whatever it is. But if you need those values to be carried forward into the general ledger, that's when you use dimensions.
Okay.
All right.
Makes a lot of sense.
And then the last thing is, if you're using dimensions, there are built-in tools inside Business Central that allow you to analyze your data, slice and dice your data. Account schedules, analysis views, and analysis by dimension are some of the things that you can use. You can also, there's a view where you can look at your GL account balances and activity by dimension, and pick those different things. So lot of very helpful built-in tools that we always suggest people use to kind of slice and dice that data.
Very, very nice.
One more thing, if you're, this is kind of a, hey, heads up, dimensions are not intended to be used to create multiple companies or separate legal entities within one Business Central company. So you can't set up company A and company B inside of one Business Central company, and because it does not keep your trial balance in balance by dimension. For example, like AR, AP, and inventory are transaction types where it kind of aggregates the entries together, and it doesn't do self-balancing entries by dimension code. So if you do have a separate legal entity, it requires its own balance sheet. That's where you either have to create a second Business Central company for it, or use an app that specifically handles that. Like if you're a nonprofit, it's like the fund accounting solution, or there's a multi-entity management solution that you can use for that.